Okay, well, welcome today, everyone, to our PDI Powering Iowa Electric Utilities Education Series. I'm Amber Rodgers, and I am the Global Business Team Lead here at IEDA. We have combined our business development team and our international trade team into one, which is global business. So that is a new change here at the IEDA offices. I've been here about 2 years. And today we're setting a foundation for you for this 3-part series with Powering Iowa's Landscape. The next 2 sessions will build upon what we discuss here today. Part 2 will be more in-depth with electric utility partners. And then the 3rd session will go into further detail regarding RFIs and other project-related items. In this way, you'll enjoy a comprehensive learning experience over the course of the series. Joining me today, we have Kristin Hanks-Bents and Amber Buckingham of the Iowa Energy Office, which is housed here at IEDA. Kristin Hanks-Bents began serving as the Energy Division Administrator for the Iowa Energy Office at IEDA in February of this year. She was part of the Office of Energy Independence team that moved to IEDA in 2011, and she's worn a number of hats since then, including legislative liaison for our sister agency, Iowa Finance Authority, and legal counsel for IEDA and IFA. Amber Buckingham is a program manager with the Iowa Energy Office, a division of Iowa Economic Development Authority. She's been with the agency since 2017 and currently manages the Iowa Energy Center grant program, which provides funding for projects that aid in the implementation of the Iowa Energy Plan. Her previous roles include managing the energy efficiency rebate portfolio for an investor-owned utility and working as an energy efficiency implementation contractor. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we have our conversation this afternoon. We may take some breaks and take questions throughout or wait till the end, just depending on how things go. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today to educate us on Iowa's energy landscape. We really appreciate your time and expertise. So we're just going to have a conversation about energy and what our energy office does here at IEDA. So can we start with what is the role of the Iowa Energy Office?
Yeah, so the Iowa Energy Office manages a mix of state, federal, and utility funded programs and initiatives, and with the goal of providing energy and economic benefits for all Iowans. So we're not involved in setting standards. We don't set any kind of standards for energy generation or usage or anything like that. We have grant programs and loan programs, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but we also have initiatives like the State Energy Plan. So that is a document that we use to kind of help try to align stakeholders and get everybody working in the same direction. So that's one way that we are engaging with stakeholders. We're always engaging with stakeholders, and we're not working in a vacuum.
Great, thank you so much for that. We've been talking about the state of the industry, and can you address the state of the energy sector here in Iowa? Specifically, what progress has been made in the last few years?
Sure, happy to. So I am just going to straight up read the statistic because I was doing a little bit of research on the U.S. Energy Information Administration website just to make sure I had my facts straight. So Iowa's industrial sector leads end-use energy consumption, accounting for slightly more than half of the state's total. And we rank among the top 10 states in total industrial sector energy use. So I think that's just a fascinating statistic. And Iowa produces more energy than it consumes, and we export it to other states. That is a change over the last several years. Iowa ranks among the 10 states with the highest electricity sales per capita and is among the 10 states with the lowest average electricity price, which is obviously great news for our businesses here in Iowa. I want to kind of, from the beginning, like we have our sort of as our guiding principles in Iowa that we are committed to developing an affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy system that maximizes economic benefits for our state. And we really, as far as the energy sector here, we have an all of the above energy strategy. So we are, in terms of our energy mix of energy resources, we're always looking to, we want to maintain the diverse mix that we have, because every type of energy fuel source has its positives and its negatives. And so you really need that mix in order to accomplish all of our goals. And we're really trying to make sure we can do that to grow rural and urban Iowa. Yeah, I think another thing that I wanted to touch on is our renewable energy leadership. Um, for so Iowa was the first state in the nation to adopt the renewable portfolio standard back in 1983. And at that time, the state was requiring the two investor-owned utilities to contract for combined 105 megawatts of total renewable generating capacity. But that has since changed. By the beginning of 2023, we had 12,800 megawatts of generating capacity in the state of Iowa. So just absolutely massive growth. We are second behind Texas in wind power. So just a massive change. And it was that renewable portfolio standard that really helped set the tone and move us forward. We also, I think everybody knows, we lead the nation in the production of fuel ethanol, but also biodiesel. So we have a lot of positives there. And I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we went from being a net importer to an exporter over the last several years. So we've gone from our wind turbines have been very productive. Our mix has changed from more of an emphasis on coal. We were at 44% 5 years ago. That's down to about 25%. Wind is now about 62% of the state's net generation. And as far as our other fuel sources, that is natural gas, solar, hydropower, and biomass is most of that. And yeah, that's kind of where I stop there.
Fantastic. So interesting. I mean, unfortunately, we've had a lot of severe weather this spring in Iowa. So with the natural disasters that we've seen that are affecting many of our communities, how is the grid reliability being addressed? And then what is the impact in Iowa compared to other states?
Sure, absolutely. So obviously, not just this spring, but just in, over the last 5 years, we've had more storms, and those storms are more severe, which clearly has an impact, can have an impact on the grid. So I want to kind of go back and do a little bit of a grid 101. So utilities generate power, but organizations called regional transmission organizations are the ones that actually oversee the grid. So in Iowa, we are a member of two, our utilities are members of two RTOs. They are MISO and SPP. MISO covers most of the state. SPP covers a little bit of it. MISO goes from Minnesota down to, I want to say, Louisiana, very large territory. And one of the great benefits of being a member of MISO is that when we have issues like some of the severe winter weather that we've had, states that are members of MISO within MISO territory, they can more easily transmit power from one state to another. So if one state is having severe impacts from any kind of storm, other states can also produce capacity that's missing, and we can transmit it across those transmission lines within MISO territory. So MISO is kind of always behind the scenes, they're helping make the market for electricity. They are making sure that the transmission lines are in place. They're doing like the short-term emergency work of like constantly monitoring the network to long-range transmission planning. I would contrast that with someplace like Texas. Texas is entirely on its own. It is not part of an RTO, and they are completely separate from the rest of the country. So, for instance, in February 2021, when they had that massive winter storm, one of the main reasons they had so many impacts is they couldn't get power from other states. Like literally, you cannot make the power cross transmission lines into Texas. So they don't have any backup. And we all know that emergencies and natural disasters, they're going to happen. They're going to keep happening. And so everybody needs to have a backup plan. And, the grid and being connected with other states is a big part of that. I think an important thing to know about how we at the Energy Office aren't necessarily part of those plans, but MISO is working on long-range transmission planning. So they have released their first tranche of projects. They're studying their second tranche. These things take a very long time to come to fruition. And it's one of those things where one interesting dynamic that you're seeing is that we can build manufacturing plants and we can build data centers a lot faster than we can build new transmission lines. So that's something that as they're studying capacity in the future, it's just constantly balancing those factors in order to try and come up with a sufficient amount of capacity to address the needs that we have. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
Okay. You covered it very well.
All right.
Great. Thank you. Earlier this week, we were talking about the role that the energy sector plays in local and state economic development, particularly in terms of job creation and infrastructure investment. So from my side of things, last week I was with Greater Des Moines Partnership, and they brought in a few site selectors from different areas of the country to have a tour of the Greater Des Moines area. And a person asked a question, what are the most important factors in site selection right now? Number one would be availability of those sites. But number two is the capacity constraints or availability of power at those sites. And then number three is workforce, which that has changed drastically in just the last 12 to 24 months, I would say. So that is that capacity, that availability of power at our sites that we have across the state is hugely important to our business attraction efforts. If you are trying to attract a data center to a certain area, you have to be ready with that type of capacity to bring that type of customer or business in. And I would say that sustainability and green energy is another factor in Iowa, across the nation especially, but in Iowa with our renewable wind, as you mentioned, availability, that is very attractive to a lot of businesses to be able to hit their own sustainability goals, is if they can locate somewhere where we have that availability of renewable energy. Yeah. What about the most significant technological advancements in the energy sector over the past few years? How are those shaping the future?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of research in many sectors of the energy field, from wind energy to solar energy. But I think one of the most exciting things has been research around energy storage, particularly around the use of batteries. And I think when we talk about batteries, there can be small scale batteries that you could potentially utilize inside of your home, and then large scale batteries that you could use inside of your business. But I think the biggest thing has been grid scale battery facilities that are being built. And these types of facilities can store increasingly large amounts of energy, which does enable us to harness excess wind and solar energy for later use, which leads to a more stable and reliable grid. And one of the things that we're doing at the Energy Office is funding some pretty cool research, I think, in the energy storage arena, such as battery sodium instead of rare earth materials, 3D printed batteries, reusing EV batteries for small scale storage, like in your home, and the recycling of battery components that allow recharging of those batteries for later use. And these are the types of research projects that can lead to wider adoption of energy storage, lower prices, and the more stable grid as the region and the nation electrifies.
Wow. It's very
So
exciting.
it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, very much. Let's talk about the programs at the Iowa Energy Office. What are some of the more recent projects that you have partnered with that are going to make major advancements?
Yeah. You go ahead.
Okay. I think as the manager of the Iowa Energy Center grant program, I can talk a lot about the projects that we funded through that program. We do a lot of research projects. We are researching the impact of electric vehicles and electrification on the grid, because obviously as we electrify, there's going to be more capacity requirements. So ensuring that the grid can handle those requests. Resiliency planning tools, helping predict and prevent outages, types of things can help deploy workers in advance of outages to bring people back online more quickly. Transmission and distribution planning tools that municipal utilities and electric co-ops can utilize. Community energy planning, advancements in renewable energy technologies like recycling wind turbine blades and solar panels, wastewater treatment facility improvements, 3D printed housing, and one that I think is just kind of cool, is fuel cells from ethanol. Just a little plug for that one. And I think a lot of the research aims to ensure things like energy storage are sustainable. So researching the sodium batteries, as mentioned before, the 3D printed batteries and things like that, just make sure that those technologies that we are utilizing can be used in the future.
Absolutely. And I would say kind of Amber covered a lot of ground. Another, we have projects that are helping to basically kind of a USDA REAP grant funding concierge. So what people may not realize is that actually a lot of energy money flows through USDA's REAP program. So that program, we are trying to help rural non-agricultural producers get access to that money. So our rural agricultural producers have done a great job of taking advantage of that funding, but we want to make sure that we share the love and access to that funding. And so we have recently partnered with, and I never know how to say the name of his company. Terink. But a gentleman named Chris Ball, he will be reaching out to rural businesses across the state, helping to educate them about USDA REAP funding, and then for some businesses that are interested and want to pursue it, he will help them with writing their grant application to USDA, and those funds can be used for energy efficiency and some renewable energy projects. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity there. We're really excited to see where this program goes goes over the next year. In general, I would say like a lot of our funding is federal in nature. So we do have a lot of federal requirements around how it gets spent. Amber covered some of it. We have some funding that is relatively new, and it's related to SEP, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and things like that. So we have some funding for energy efficiency and conservation, which mainly flows to communities, and the grid resilience projects, some of which Amber already touched on. So we have a lot of that. And we also have, I just want to kind of put in a plug for the state energy plan. We'll be making updates to the state energy plan over the next year and a half, and engaging with stakeholders and having meetings across the state, and definitely want to encourage our local our developers and our businesses to be part of that effort, because we need to hear from all of them to find out what the needs are, so that we can address that is in the state energy plan. Because even though, as I said, it's not going to be setting standards, it's going to be kind of a compass to help us all keep working in the same direction. So want to just say, watch for that one in the future.
Would that be something that we could share as PDI with our members when those dates and locations come out?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Great. Recently, I was at a conference, and some topics came up that were new to me, and one was small-scale nuclear for businesses.
Yeah.
It kind of blew my mind, but it was intriguing. Do you have? Is that on your radar? And then any other trends that are popping up in economic development as far as energy goes?
Yeah. So I would say I was lucky to be able to attend a conference at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in April. And so I'm not as familiar with small scale nuclear, but just in general, the nuclear space has changed tremendously over the last 10 or 15 years. I feel like when I first started at OEI, no one was really talking about nuclear, or they were talking about it in terms of like, we have these assets and they're just a problem. That's, sort of a layperson's kind of take on it. But I think what you're seeing now is a tremendous amount of interest in developing, they call them small modular reactors. So you basically have reactors that you have like a series of them, and you can take one out at a time because you have to refuel. So those are, I think it's more about new ways that we could potentially use nuclear at a utility scale, and bringing more of those resources online. There's a tremendous amount of research that's happening in terms of different types of cooling technologies and different types of core technologies, and it's just kind of a fascinating area of research, and really exciting because, and I have to mention, I have to mention, I learned on this trip that 3 tablespoons of what's called HALEU, which is basically short for uranium, 3 tablespoons of uranium will power enough electricity for your entire lifetime, like for one person. 3 tablespoons. That's it.
Wow.
Which is tremendous amount.
That's
or
incredible.
tremendous amount of power to generate. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. So it's pretty incredible. My favorite fact that I
That is. We love that fact.
Yes.
Great. Well, I think we're getting towards the end of our talk today, but what other topics coming out of conversations in the energy space are you looking forward to diving in on?
Definitely looking forward to, as we move into our state energy plan, nuclear was not a part of our previous state energy plan.
Okay.
We will definitely be looking at nuclear. And also hydrogen is another area of incredible interest in the last couple of years. I myself I know very little about hydrogen, but it's definitely an area that we want to dive into and learn more about. And just figuring out all of the different ways we can, nuclear and hydrogen have the potential to be part of that reliability picture, because when we have renewable resources like wind and solar, they are subject to weather conditions. You know, if the wind isn't blowing, we're not producing as much energy. So we need to be able, that's the importance of having an all of the above energy strategy. So those are a couple of the topics that I'm interested in. Also, since I've started this job, I've really gotten interested in the grid resiliency in general.
Yeah.
It's a topic that there's a lot of complexity there, but it's so foundational to everything that we do. So those are some things that I'm interested in diving into.
I would just put a plug in for the old reliable energy efficiency. While all of the new technology is really exciting, ensuring that the facilities and the homes that we do currently have and the energy systems that we are using are as efficient as possible will also help as we transition and help stabilize the grid.
Yep,
Awesome.
for sure.
Great. Is there anything we missed that you want us to know about your office and your work, priorities you have?
Yeah. The main thing that I want to say is that, we are a small energy office and we certainly don't know everything, but if you have a question, reach out, because if we don't know the answer, we will try to point you in the right direction. We will connect you with people who might know the answer. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions.
Absolutely. That's something I always talk about as well. I might not have the answer, but I can connect you to someone who will. It's a really important thing across our entire office and organization at IEDA. Lane, do you have questions for us that we can answer?
There aren't any questions in the chat yet, but if anyone has any questions, you can either unmute and ask those directly or put them in the chat and we can read them off.
You can always feel free to email me as well. I will get some contact info for these ladies to Lane so that she can share that out when the presentation gets shared out, when the recording is. Quiet group today.
I have a question. This is Anne McMahon. I'm curious about, in your office or your programs currently, is there anything that we could apply for or have other clients or other contacts apply for, upcoming deadlines and things that are important or good to know?
In terms of programs right now, we don't have anything that is currently open. We are working with our revolving loan fund, getting that energy efficiency revolving loan fund. So we're kind of fine tuning that design, and that'll be out within a few coming months. We do have our rebate program, but that's well down the road, and I would say it's more individual focused. And we will be having our grid resilience fund will open up again next year. We just had a round that was approved, but so we'll have a few more years of funding, so that'll be like an annual thing that people can look to. It is primarily utility focused.
Great. Very good question. Okay. Well, we want to thank you for joining us today to learn more about Iowa's energy landscape, and we look forward to the next 2 sessions over the summer. Thanks so much. Have a great day.